One of the primary pillars of Pope Francis's pontificate was building bridges to other faiths. He fostered positive Catholic-Jewish relations through friendships, a strong stance against anti-Semitism, and visits to Israel and Auschwitz. He also maintained daily contact with a priest in Gaza during that war. He attended interreligious meetings in Kazakhstan and Abu Dhabi and gave a keynote address where he said, "There is no alternative. We either build the future together or there will be no future." He went on to say, religions in particular cannot renounce the urgent task of building bridges between peoples and cultures. He became a good friend of Ahmed el-Tayyib, the Grand Imam of Egypt's Al-Azhar, the highest seat of learning in Sunni Islam. He also developed a strong relationship with the ecumenical patriarch Bartholomew of the Orthodox faith. He joined the head of the Anglican Church of England and the head of the Church of Scotland in Africa and Sudan. He learned about women priests. He invited a female Anglican archbishop to the Vatican to learn about women priests in the Anglican Confession. In 2019, he visited Morocco and met with Catholics and Muslim leaders in that country. On this plane ride back from Morocco, he held one of his informal press conferences where he said, "We have seen even in a dialogue with you here in Morocco that bridges are needed. And we feel pain when we see people who prefer to build walls. Why do we feel sad? Because those who build walls will end up being prisoners of the walls they build. Instead, those who build bridges will go forward. Building bridges for me is something that goes almost beyond human because it takes great effort." The process of building bridges starts with the recognition that you have some sort of need, and you must reach out to something else to meet that need. Pope Francis was seeking to move the world toward a more peaceful environment. Together, we must address issues in the world such as poverty, immigration, climate change, and much more. We must encourage religions to work in harmony to address these issues. The next step is to become humble enough to overcome animosity to other religions, to recognize the validity of their faith and their dignity, and often to learn from them. Then to recognize their mutual desire toward working together for the benefit of their people and of the world. This will lead to the healing of relations that have long been difficult, often based on rhetoric that demonizes the other. Learning to recognize and build on the dignity of each faith, we will lower the tensions between them, allowing dialogue to begin and establish common ground. Prayerfully, we hope this leads to more peace in the world. So where did Pope Francis learn about this technique? Often, I would say, directly from the teachings found in the Bible. Some of those teachings we read about in today's readings. To understand the process of bridge building in the first reading, I really need to provide some background on the story of Naaman that comes before today's first reading. He was a Syrian general who had conducted battles against Israel and had had some success. However, he developed leprosy, which probably forced him away from his army and his way of life. He had the need to find a cure for this leprosy. In his effort to find a cure, a young Hebrew girl he had captured during his battle with Israel and had given to his wife as a servant suggested he go to Israel and meet a prophet who could cure him. But Israel was a foe and another ethnic group with which Syria had very bad relationships. Nevertheless, in humility, he accepted her suggestion and with the approval of his king went to Israel. His entourage, not his army, first went to the king of Israel, who thought he was trying to create a reason to go to war. Elisha heard about this and told the king to have Naaman come to him, and so Naaman did. Elisha did not come out to greet the general, but sent word to him for him to bathe 7 times in the Jordan. Naaman was furious. He was furious for Elisha for not meeting him in person and thought the remedy was ridiculous, as he could bathe in the rivers of Damascus. One of his servants counseled him that if the prophet had given him something more difficult, he would have done it. Why not try this? So he bathed 7 times and was cured, then acknowledged that there is no other God except the Lord. Naaman's humility was demonstrated by his willingness to overcome his attitude toward Israel and its people, and to first listen to a young girl. After all, she was a girl. She was young, and she was a Hebrew. Why should he listen to her? But he did. Similarly, he was taken aback by the simple instructions from Elisha, but with the urging of his servant did it. He humbled himself by bathing in the Jordan. By going to Israel and meeting with Elisha, he recognized the good in Israel, and particularly in Elisha. This was not an expected reaction then, and even today, relations between ethnic, religious, and political views often demonize the other without really getting to know and understand them. In doing this, Naaman found the physical healing of being cured, but also the healing of being able to interact with other people, to participate in their culture and religious activities, to live normally, and to accept their God as his God. In today's gospel, we see a similar process. 10 men had leprosy. As leprosy was seen as a terrible affliction that could be communicated to other people, it forced the lepers to live outside the community. They were unable to worship in the temple or their local synagogue, and they couldn't work and depended on handouts to survive. They saw hope in this new prophet who might be able to cure them. Although they were not supposed to approach anyone, even at a distance, they begged Jesus for healing, which he did, and sent them to the priest to be declared clean. Although all recognized that they had been healed, only one, a foreigner, came back to thank Jesus. The Samaritan had to overcome his religious animosity to Jews to ask for and accept help from a preacher of that religion. In our second reading, we find St. Paul in prison. The government had built a wall around him in order to prevent him from spreading his religion. Paul, seeing the need to encourage his former disciple, Timothy, wrote several letters to him to encourage him to overcome the resistance he was facing from the local people against the small Christian community he was leading. You can understand the reluctance of the local people from following his new way. The center of that way had been crucified as a criminal. The current spokesman, St. Paul, was also in jail, and the faith they preached was contrary to everything they had believed. Timothy needed to build a bridge to the other religions in the area. As Pope Francis was reaching out to other religions to build bridges of understanding and common mission, we too are encouraged not to look at those with different religions or political beliefs as evil or deranged. There are too many issues in the world, such as poverty, immigration, climate change, to name a few, to be left unaddressed. We all have different views on how these could be remedied. By sharing our views, we learn from each other, and this often leaves us with a better result. We are fortunate to live in Colombia, which is a very diverse population. We who worship at St. John also share our faith with a diverse population. We include African Americans, Africans, Hispanics, Asians, and even a Filipino choir, Haitians, and more. We have the opportunity to build bridges with those communities and share in their cultures and food. We also need to build bridges to the poor, the disabled, the elderly, to all groups who are on the margins and want to be part of the greater community. If we can overcome our misplaced understandings of all these groups and humble ourselves to work with them, together we can build a better world. Amen.